I have a freakishly long torso.
That's making it in there.
It's strange.
That is definitely making it in there. All right. He anchors 4 hours every single morning, and he still makes time to come on Ballot Battleground Nevada. Chris Murphy, thank you for coming back.
Good to see you.
Yeah, we're so happy to have you
Thank
here
you.
for another mailbag episode. You know, they loved the chemistry that we had so much last time. They loved the listener questions, and we get so many of them, we wanted to answer some more.
Well, you're just an easy guy to talk to. That's what it is. It takes two to tango, Ben Margiott.
Absolutely, it does.
Let's
And
get
we've
the
got
most
a pretty good
important thing.
tango by now.
Thank you. Let's get the most important thing out of the way. You named your son Sage after the state flower of Nevada. How is little Sage?
He is doing great. He is 2 years and 3-ish months now and running around like crazy, speaking like crazy. And most importantly for the Ballot Battleground Nevada audience, he can now say Washoe County.
And
which is literally this morning, Chris, I was getting ready and he said, I live Washoe County. Oh, it blew my mind. I'm like, how is he picking these things up?
And Daddy lives Washoe County politics.
Right.
That's your life.
And he can say Las Vegas. So for our Southern Nevada friends, he knows that we have a friend, Matt, that lives Matt in Las Vegas. I'm like, wow, dude, you just turned 2.
So speaking of Sage, if you think about it, the first presidential election of his lifetime will go down as the craziest election cycle ever.
Literally ever. And funny story, listeners might have heard this one before, but tell it again for our new listeners. He was born the day before the primary election in 2022. Me and my wife, Kenzie, who's very integral to the News 4 operation, we were both completely out of pocket for an entire election day, primary 2022, in the hospital watching. All of our coworkers do a great job covering it, but it was surreal to be there. So
you had bigger things on your plate.
Absolutely.
All right, let's get to the mailbag.
Let's do it.
Do you want to tackle the first one? This is from someone on Reddit, Sacred Lambkin. Does Nevada do mail-in voting?
We do. This is a great question because it's from, I saw it down in the comments below. I believe this person used to live in Colorado, moved here. Maybe they do a little like half and half, but they're a Nevada resident, so they want to know, does Nevada do mail-in voting? And yes, within the last several years, Nevada passed universal mail-in voting. Initially, it was supposed to be it was passed in the COVID pandemic when we couldn't leave our homes, so we all voted by mail. Nevada Democrats, I believe, in 2021 made it permanent. So for all elections moving forward, you're going to get a ballot in your mail. I believe in Washoe County, at least, they're sending them out in mid-October. I don't know the exact date. You can vote by that. You can send it back through USPS. You could drop it off at a drop box. You could go in early voting. And, of course, you can always vote in on Election Day as well. So many options here in the Silver State to vote.
To get your vote counted, for sure.
Yeah. How do you vote, Chris?
Well, I've done mail-in before, but you know what? I'm kind of old school. I'm a traditionalist.
Yeah.
I like to actually go in person. I like to get the little I voted sticker.
You have to get the sticker, absolutely.
And I like to thank the volunteers for their time because of what a big civic duty and opportunity it is.
Absolutely critical.
And it's one of those collective moments that we don't have anymore. We're always just on our phones these days. You walk around, everyone has their head down. But when there's a time to come together, whether it's a concert or a sporting event, or something like this where we're voting, no matter what your politics or how you vote, we're all doing it as Americans.
I couldn't agree more. I do love being at the polling places, reporting on Election Day. You see people getting their I voted stickers or the first-time voters getting their certificate. It's awesome. I've collected, Chris, every I voted sticker since I started voting when I turned 18. So I have like 10 or some of these stickers now.
That's cool.
And it's a cool little, I put them on a binder paper and get to keep track of, all the different counties that I voted in.
Yeah.
So it's cool.
Well, I like that we have mail-in voting only it's so inclusive.
Yeah, very, very inclusive here.
All right, next question. How much do you think the election results will differ from the polls this year? This is from Manifested Reality writing this in on Reddit.
It's anyone's guess. I really wish, we had these polls that were perfect and could predict the outcome every time, but we saw in 2016 a mass polling error that everyone thought Hillary Clinton was going to win that election. Obviously, that's not what happened. Pollsters, I think, are adjusting there is, a sense out there that there are some Trump voters that don't want to tell a pollster who they're voting for. And so pollsters have tried to adjust for that in recent cycles and anticipate that kind of non-response bias, I think they call it. But this is not a 538 politics podcast. We're not going to get so deep in the weeds on the polls. It's going to be close. It's going to be a razor-thin margin in Nevada. And briefly, I will mention the polls, Kamala Harris leading by 0.5 percentage point in Nevada's polling average from 538. Obviously, that's well within the margin of errors, which is usually 3 or 4 points. So it is anyone's guess at this point. That's what makes it interesting and exciting. And it's what makes kind of these last few weeks, we only have 40 days left or something, all that more important. These campaigns and the volunteers, they do matter when the race is this close.
Razor thin. All right, here's another question from Law and Order Nerd. I love that, on Reddit as well. Ballot counting has been extremely slow here in Nevada for the last 2 elections. In fact, I believe I still have memes from 2020 making fun of us. What progress has been made in speeding up the counting process here in Nevada? And did the state and local governments invest the money needed to increase the counting speed? If so, how much faster can we expect to see results compared to 2020?
Yeah, the memes were flying around on election night. Everyone was waiting on Nevada. We were counting our results with Windows 98. I'm just kidding, but that was what people were saying about us.
Sure, wasn't Windows 95?
Yeah, right. Older than that, we were the laughing stock. So I guess a little bit of good news and bad news for the Law and Order nerd here. Yes, there have been a couple of steps, and I'll walk us through those that have been taken to make things probably a little bit faster. But at the end of the day, counting mail ballots specifically takes time. So number one, election officials can start counting ballots as soon as 8 a.m. on Election Day. It used to be they had to wait until the polls close at 7 p.m. on Election Day. So that gives them, a full day's kind of head start, if you will, to start counting all those mail ballots that have arrived prior. There's more staff in the Washoe County Registrar's office. I'm pulling up my phone to just make sure I get the number right. There were 9 people in the County Registrar's office back in 2022. That's basically doubled now, or it has doubled. 18 people in the Washoe County Registrar's office. So the county has invested money into boosting the staffing levels there. There's a new mail ballot processor that's supposed to be faster and more exciting. And so those things will help for sure a little bit on the margins, but there's going to be a huge turnout in this election. We know that. And at the end of the day, counting mail ballots simply takes longer. You have to have a machine or a person open each ballot individually, check the signature, run it through the Scantron, if you will. That just takes a lot longer. And with 2/3 of voters using the mail-in voting, it's going to take a little bit of time. So maybe, long story short, a little bit faster than in 2020, but it's still going to take longer than some of these other states that don't have widespread universal mail-in voting across the board.
Good answer, Ben. I love how much research you do. For these podcasts that you record weekly, how much time would you say you spend?
A lot of time behind the scenes, It's becoming, I still do 4 stories a week on air. But inevitably I'm doing podcast stuff all throughout the week so that, I'm prepared and informed coming in to answer our amazing listener questions.
You're killing it, Ben Margiott.
Thank you, Chris.
Someday we'll tell your son how much work you did. Hi, Ben. This is from Politics Scare Me, which I love. The third Politics Scare Me on Reddit. Hi, Ben. With the promise of former President Trump to remove the taxation on tips, which has now been adopted, I should say, by Vice President Harris, and overtime pay. Would this be something that he could enact unilaterally through an executive order? I know Representative Horsford has pushed a bill forward in the House to remove taxes on tips, but if it were to fail, could a president do it through an executive order? Also, what would the impact be of removing taxation on tips and overtime pay here in Nevada? Thank you.
This is a great question of a critical issue here in Nevada because Nevada has the most tipped workers of any state, of course, with the service industry and the strip and tourism economy here in northern Nevada as well. My understanding, and a Harris campaign official recently said this too, it would take an act of Congress, a legislation to pass in the House and Senate in order to remove the federal taxation on tips. So it seems to be that there is bipartisan support for doing this. Obviously, it's supported by President Trump, who first raised it, supported by Kamala Harris and many in Nevada's Democratic senators. There is bipartisan support for it, but yes, it would need to go through the House and the Senate. As for what the impact of removing it on the taxation on tips in Nevada would be, I need to do more research on this myself, Chris, but it would obviously be huge. There's a sizable portion of taxable workers here in Nevada. Nationwide, it's about 2.5%, but I think in Nevada it's closer to 4%. So, roughly 1 in 20 or 1 in 25 people is getting their income through tips. There's some concern that employers would kind of shift that so that less of a person's income comes through tips. and it remains to be seen a little bit. Tax experts are kind of worried about the implications of this, definitely for the amount of revenue that the federal government is bringing in. A lot of questions still to be answered, and hope to do some more stories on this in the coming weeks as people are considering this proposal when they vote.
Absolutely. Okay, good. This is from Judy on Facebook, and she says, who's behind question 3? What is so bad about it? And that both the Democratic and Republican parties are sending out brochures urging a no vote.
Yeah, politics makes strange bedfellows. You've got, high-ranking Republicans in the Republican Party, high-ranking Democrats in the Democratic Party, and progressive groups all kind of allying together to advocate against question 3. But I'll start with who's behind it. And a lot of times you'll hear that it's out-of-state billionaires, and really that's true. Back in 2022, the first time it was on the ballot, the overwhelming majority of the donations to the Nevada Voters First PAC came from out-of-state donors. And this cycle, the Yes on 3 campaign, we only have one campaign finance report so far, but 95% of the money was from out of state. The big backer of all this is a woman by the name of Catherine Gale, I believe. She was the president and CEO of a family-owned company, Gale Foods. She's an author and philanthropist, and she's kind of pioneered the concept of final 5 voting, but very wealthy woman. I don't know what state she's in, but out of state, that is spending a heck of a lot of money here in Nevada to the tune of several $1 million to try and get this passed. And I will plug for something that we, maybe by the time this podcast drops, will have announced, which is a special program, won't say exactly what yet, on question 3 in the coming weeks, where we will have a lot more deeper dive into all things question 3, because we're getting so many questions about it.
Jeremy writes on X this time, abortion is on the ballot, but will not be added in the Constitution until voted on a second time? Question mark, question mark, question mark.
Correct. Yes, and I'll put a link to another episode that we've done on this recently in the show notes, where we go in a lot more detail on the abortion ballot measure. But long story short, it is question 6, the Reproductive Rights Amendment, and it simply asks, do you want to enshrine abortion rights up until the point of fetal viability in Nevada's Constitution? Right now we have a 24-week cutoff. That's where the threshold is set at, 24 weeks. This would make it a cutoff on fetal viability, and it would be in the state constitution if it were to pass twice. It's going to be on the ballot in November. If it passes in November, it's going to be on your 2026 ballot. And if it were to pass then, it would be in the state constitution, this protection of abortion rights until fetal viability. And of course, the backdrop of all this, the overturning of Roe v. Wade, right, the Dobbs decision, and many states around the country have rolled back abortion protections, enacted these strict measures. Nevada right now, it's protected in state law. It is not in the Constitution. It's kind of a misnomer that's out there. It is in the state law. This would put it in the state constitution. One extra layer of protection, if you will, that would be even more difficult to undo here in the Silver State.
Interesting. And, back to the tips question that we had earlier,
sure,
it strikes me that there's somewhat of a parallel with the student loan forgiveness issue. And Nancy Pelosi came out against it, saying, hey, President Biden, you can't just unilaterally forgive student debt. That's a federal program. That has the power of the purse go through Congress, the legislative branch. They're the ones who can come up with monetary policy, essentially, not policy, but
sure,
law.
Yeah.
And then it can be signed by the president. In this case, it seems like that might be what they're getting at there with the tip issue when it comes to Congress would need to do that, not President Harris or President Trump.
That is a really good point. Yeah, and perhaps the president could do it through executive order, but we know in this day and age that every single executive order is going to be litigated. There will be lawsuits filed. In the case of the student loan forgiveness, a big chunk of that program was struck down in the courts. And so the safer, better way from a policy standpoint to do this is through legislation, through Congress, and it'll hold up a little bit better in the courts as compared to the executive order. Maybe a president could do it through an EO, executive order, but certainly when we're talking about, the power of the purse is held by Congress, and so presumably that's going to have to go through the House and the Senate. And we'll see. You know, both of the major candidates in this race support this proposal of ending taxes on tips. And so regardless of who wins, we're going to keep doing stories on it because it would have, of course, huge implications here in Nevada.
Just be a good tipper like Ben Margiott. You're a good podcaster and a good tipper.
How much do you tip? Like, say a haircut, you know.
Man, don't get me started on this
You're a good tipper, right?
I'm a good tipper, but I think with traditional things, like, what I hate is you'll go up to the counter and order one of those places.
Yeah.
And then they'll
spin the iPad around.
And the options are, right, like 20, 22, 25, or up to 30.
Sure, yeah.
And I thought, well, wait, I'm just standing here ordering, and then you're just going to give me my food at the counter to leave.
Yeah.
So in that case, I'll do custom tip, and I'll give them, I don't know, 10%?
Yeah.
But if I'm sitting down there waiting on you, yes. I'm giving their traditional 20% typically or more.
Yeah. If they're bringing the food out to you, then absolutely you should get a tip.
And they work hard.
And bartenders, definitely, you know, always tip your bartenders. I tip a minimum $1 every single drink.
You bet.
If not more.
Do you ever wait tables?
Did I ever wait tables? You know, I had a lot of strange jobs over the years, and that wasn't one of them. I didn't do a restaurant serving gig. I was though. I was in the service industry in a different way, which was, and I don't think I've ever told this story on this podcast, but I was the Chick-fil-A cow.
What?
The Chick-fil-A cow. Yes.
What did you have to do as the Chick-fil-A cow?
You had to go around Chick-fil-A entertaining children, you know, handing out like stickers and things. I would go into the drive-through, like kind of while cars were waiting and kind of entertain them and dance. There is a clip of me in the costume dancing somewhere. You obviously don't know that it's me, but it is me in the costume dancing. And funny, connects back to tips. There was a child that was like 6 or 7 years old. I was in high school, so it was a long time ago. That came up to me and would tip the Chick-fil-A cow. He would bring me like a couple dimes or quarters from his allowance that week to bring to the Chick-fil-A cow. And I just always loved that. But you bring smiles to the little kids' faces inside the Chick-fil-A. And that's now cute. I'm just thinking of when I get to take my son to Chick-fil-A. He'll probably be terrified of the cow at first, but yeah, for the older kids, they love it.
That's a great story.
What was your weirdest job?
I waited tables for sure. Yeah. Mimi's Cafe, and then when I was in Bakersfield, I worked at a place called Bootleggers. Good food at this brew pub. Yeah. Just getting started in the TV business.
Great life experience.
Yeah.
What was your wackiest job, though?
Right here, doing this right now with you, true, Ben Margiott.
Speaking about whatever for 4 hours every morning.
I worked after college. I worked at a place called the Gym Bag. It was like a T-shirt place for sports memorabilia. Yeah. And the boss always, you had to answer the phone. This place is long out of business. It's a great day at the Gym Bag. This is Chris. May I help you? And so my girlfriend at the time would call me just to give me grief because she wanted to hear me answer the phone. You know, it's a great day, and she'd go, "Is it a great day?" I'm like, "Oh, just shut up.
Let me work here. I'm trying to work.
Quit harassing me."
And now you get to entertain people on the morning show every single morning.
It's fun. I'm so glad you started this podcast because you talk about local stuff. We're getting so many national stories where they call our state Nevada and everything else. But you're hyper local, and I love that. Yeah. It's been fun to do this mailbag with you.
We're going to keep doing it. We're going to keep taking your questions again, especially question 3 questions. Hashtag NVQ3 debate. Can't promote that enough. And you'll be hearing about that very, very soon. Chris Murphy, thank you so much for joining us this week.
Chick-fil-A cow Margiott. Thank you, brother.
I'll have to post that picture now. Thanks for listening, guys.